it'll be much shorter because I'll just be comparing the fall diagnostics to winter diagnostics. Yeah.
And I mean, as we go through, seeing that comparison of the line.
Yeah, I think I did that last year.
It's very nice. We have revised to see the good areas that we've seen in the testing this year, and in our high school development. And we're excited to see all the areas of growth in all the buildings, and looking forward to addressing the areas of need.
I was excited to see, now again, I think I'm pretty honest with you guys, like, we still have work to do, and we know that, and we're doing hard work, and we're starting to see some shots.
All right.
Yeah, it's not still going down.
So, all parts are clear on the presentation. We'll move on to policies.
Okay. As we go through these policies, I find that sometimes I'm being redundant because I'm telling you for every policy is PSBA. So let me just start by saying for all of these, so the PSBA policy templates are developed with guidance from legal experts. So they have been vetted. They make sure that we're following all state and federal laws. The language is intentional, it's precise to ensure that we remain compliant, we minimize legal risks, and maintain consistency across Pennsylvania schools. So all of the policies before you in every committee, I think you know this, but just to kind of like clear as we move forward, they're all going to be the PSBA format, which is what we have been doing, so that I don't necessarily have to say that for every policy, and to say, if there's anything in here that you have to select, if it's things that have already been in our policies, I already go ahead and pre-select those. Does that make sense? Like if it was selected in our policy, I keep that as the guidance. And you're able to see that when you go in and look at the policies. So all that to be said, the first policy, 011, for your principles for governance and leadership, this is the new format that they have put out. I personally like how they break it down into the different categories. It's very easy to follow. And so, like, I would put that forward for the board. I think it's kind of timely. This PNN just came out, and so we had attached it to this month. Questions on 011?
I do.
Okay.
I like this a lot, especially for what we're currently dealing with board members. I would like to see more etiquette where it's put in. We need to tighten this up.
Let me make sure I understand the ask. You want me to take this back to Saxon and Stone and ask if there's any type of ethics language that we could put in here?
Yes. I mean, that's just my opinion.
I was good for yes.
Correct me if I'm wrong. So there's,
We can expect a call when we don't see something about, you know,
There is generally time before meetings when he's here that I can usually get a question or two in, so I can try that as well.
that sounds great. And if you have possible and stuff, that, you know, you, yeah. And all of you, perfect.
I think he's still on that, so I will.
Thank you.
Oh, okay. Any other questions on organization?
I think that's,
I can piggyback on that. Like, we expect a lot from our staff, administration, and our students. And if they behave like some children that we're still, we'll be nothing else. So.
we're gonna have order in the audience.
There is order. I don't know what
I
you're
don't know
talking
what's happening.
That's unnecessary.
about. I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't say a word.
Nobody's talking to you.
My water.
Well, I just don't know what the bagging was for. I don't know what you're talking about.
Anyway, we expect a lot of,
That's enough, okay? That's what we're talking about, acting professionally. Let's try to exhibit that in and out when you're up sitting at the table and not.
Yeah, no.
I appreciate that. Which is why I think that something needs to be added aggressively in here.
Yeah, and we can do it, and we can put strong language, but unfortunately, it's difficult to control immature and inappropriate behavior of others.
But when we have expectations for our students, and if they behave inappropriately, they would be expelled, they would be asked to leave, they would be not able to be part of the classroom. There needs to be, really seriously at this point. You can see with the actions that have just happened within the last 2 to 5 minutes, from those that were sitting in the audience, it's proven that it needs to be. So,
Yes.
thank you.
So we will hold this
I
back.
appreciate that
for next month.
information.
Yes, yes, thank you. Okay, policy 102, academic standards. I do want to point out on this policy that on page 2, they did add career education and work as far as the courses and health, safety, and physical education. They broke out some of the skill standards into this policy. One thing that they did is, I don't know why they did this, and I would ask the board to put it back in. They removed world languages as an area of study, and I would like us to keep world languages.
I don't like that.
So everybody is okay with keeping world languages in that list.
Why did they remove it?
You know, I'm not 100% sure on that. I'm not sure why they
Is it legal?
I mean, they didn't add it anywhere else in the policy.
No, it's not for
Doesn't
legal
they added the words
reasons.
and simply don't.
And you do approve, like when we haven't added any world language course in years, but let's say, for example, we wanted to add German in the future, we would come to you to approve that curriculum, so I would want a way to be able to do that. Again, I'm not bringing in German, I'm just using that as an example. Any questions on 102? And we will keep world language. 103 is quite beefy. They put out 103 in a PNN right at the beginning of the school year, I believe it was. So we would just ask that, and all it does is update our policy. So we would just ask that we update that. We did add in, right now, Carolyn was the compliance, and I was the Title IX coordinator, and we had looked to change that at the beginning of the year. Tim was going to do compliance, and I was going to do coordinator. In talking to Al, it just makes sense to keep Carolyn as the compliance officer for Title IX and me as the coordinator until the superintendent is selected, and then they can make that decision as to who fulfills which role. because we do have to go through training every year to make sure that we're up to date on everything.
I can't see it. I saw that too.
But it's not open for me over here either. I have it
I
up
wasn't
here.
able to look at that one.
Me
Yeah,
too.
that's crazy. I keep, it comes up on.
And it didn't open for you
So
either?
are you looking from the drive?
She might be
So on
opening
the
from
board
the,
one.
from the PDF.
It should automatically do it.
Yeah,
when
here.
it's done.
There it is, I'll go back.
Yeah. Just for future, we must actually set some time to go to your drive. And like one of, all these
Yeah.
policies are all listed in one word of shared drive.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
Well, Janelle's looking for one that's going to take any questions.
That, yeah, that,
Yeah.
yeah.
Is that okay, Janelle, if we keep
Go ahead.
going,
Yeah,
and we
keep
can
going.
come back to that
No,
one?
no, go ahead. Sorry.
So that was discrimination, harassment affecting students was 103. 104 is a very similar policy. It's discrimination, harassment affecting staff members. Again, this didn't change a whole lot from the previous one. The same thing with compliance and coordinator with Carolyn and myself. They do go into each of these policies and update like what constitutes like religious creed or race, a definition for discrimination as far as especially handicapped and disabled, but otherwise they're pretty consistent.
So in the old policy, do we designate the actual names and email addresses of the people in the old policy, or is it just by position?
It might have just told you had to have them, but you didn't put it in the policy, where now you have to actually put it in the policy. So, this week you would come back around with us and do that. I mean, just on the names. Yeah, it is on there, actually, page 5 of 7 on the old policy. It was Bev Carpenter and, so yeah, definitely. Bev Carpenter and Dr. Hiasley.
So we're just gonna have that on our, I don't know if we keep a list of things somewhere that like if positions change, we may have to update, people change positions.
Everybody, okay. Policy 105 is curriculum, and it's, if you go to page 2, I selected everything on there that our district currently has. And I will say they also added, we have to comply with state and federal law, including but not limited to, and this is planning some type of instruction or provisions for special instruction for Constitution Day and Citizenship Day, Arbor Day, and the Bill of Rights Day. So that will be in policy now. Excuse me?
I love the Constitution Day, and I know that, fifth graders in Mississippi, they love the idea of the Constitution. Eighth graders get.
Yeah, so this would be every grade level, like obviously grade appropriate, that they would do something little. I think I shared in my report earlier this month, so even though Veterans Day may not be right at that time of their curriculum, I was in second grade classrooms and they were doing something for Veterans Day. So I do think our staff does a nice job of recognizing those special holidays. The other thing that we did on this, if you look at page 3, where it says delegation of responsibilities, our policy had administrators and teaching staff members, but because we run our curriculum through the CC&P committee, I would make the recommendation that we check board members and add the phrase through the curriculum, co-curricular, and policy committee, which is how it's in the document that's linked to the agenda.
Everyone good with notifying?
Yes.
And are you good with that recommendation of board
Yes.
members
Yes.
through the CC&P committee?
Yes.
I mean, we'll spell it out.
Yes, yes, you're good.
Policy 122 is extracurricular. I would say the only thing they did is they added athletics into this policy. And then the other thing they did is they took a whole bunch out of that policy and made it 122.1. So 122.1 came from pulling out non-curricular, non-school sponsored organizations and made it its own separate policy. So you'll see you have 122 and 122.1. 122.1 is a brand new policy for us. And then I selected all of the appropriate checkboxes that match our current policies. Does anybody have any questions on policy 122? If you could go to page 4 of policy 122.1. The very last page, the second to the last bullet point there, where you can select or not select that. My recommendation is that you select that. That any student group, so these are non-sponsored, non-school, that just use our property basically, that they would have to advertise that they are not a school-sponsored activity. And I would recommend that you do that. That would be my recommendation.
This is a legal declaration.
Yeah, because you're not sponsoring them. They're a non-school entity organization that just happens to be meeting here. So, like when they go to advertise, it should be that they are not affiliated with the school. And that's just my recommendation. Thoughts on that?
No, I think it's a good idea.
Policy 123 did not have any substantial changes at all. So I selected the same areas that our current policy has. What I will mention, just as a side note, since this has some PIAA stuff in it, I don't know if you guys saw when the state budget was passed, they also passed that we have to accept cash at our games, where PIAA was really fighting that.
Yeah.
So it did come through with this. It's amazing how many state codes change for education through this budgeting process, and that was one of them. So we will, again, be accepting cash, which I think is a welcome relief to some of our community
I mean,
members.
we at the district level, or the school district level, always accepted cash. It was when our teams got into districts and states
Mhm.
that the District 3 and PIAA only would accept electronic. And it was not just, it wasn't like only electronic there at the gate. You couldn't even buy tickets at the gate, right? You had to buy
Mostly
them
not.
Yeah.
ahead of time online. So this
So
is,
this stops that.
yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's great.
I did hear the other day that Pennsylvania has the 5th oldest population in the country. So we're asking our seniors to make sure they always have the technology they need to buy tickets online. Policy 201 is our annual policy. It has to be approved every year. This is for establishing our age entry for kindergarten. And as long as you're okay with keeping the same date that we have traditionally kept is August 31st, this just needs approved every year.
Mhm.
Diabetes management. A lot of this was the same, but the new thing is that we can train additional staff members to help with diabetes care. So our nurse is able to do that. So that was one of the changes in this policy, which I think is a move in the right direction. I think sometimes Pennsylvania is a little slow to move in these areas, so it's a welcome change.
Does this mean then that students like the kindergarten so further, they would still be able to go? on
Because we
their
can
trip,
train
because we
other
could
people
train
to
other
go.
staff that might be
Yeah.
willing to be able to go with them.
Yeah, now I will say that there are some medications that they're not as lenient on. And we do, with Kim Costello, our nurse at the high school, she keeps a really good pulse on what's trying to come through the state as far